American City right now. It's proud to have you on what it amounts to my front lawn, but in many ways it's right up this street that my career started in politics. It was a bunch of tenant leaders who were perhaps, I always say I got my BA from Stanford, but my PhD on the streets of Newark. It was a bunch of tenant leaders that pushed me into running for office because they really believed that was the best way to make a difference in this neighborhood. I've long since believed that life is about purpose and not position, and I tried to stay true to the purpose that brought me into politics in the first place. That's why if you're in my office in Washington, it's a map of this neighborhood that sits behind me in my desk to focus on the folks who first took a chance on me and put me into the game. And what my neighbors are concerned with, and I've heard all around the country, is that people in America are losing faith that this nation will work for them. They're beginning to believe that too many folks are going to get left out or left behind. They're beginning to believe that the forces that are tearing us apart are stronger than the forces that bond us together as a people, as a country. I'm running for president because I want to address these issues. We are a nation, the story of who we are. Everybody who's gathered on my front walk here, we are all here because Americans from different backgrounds, different races, different religions, even different political parties stood together, worked together, fought together to make this country stand for something. What makes us unique and different is that we have folks from all over the planet Earth, from Eastern Europe to Asia, from Western Europe to Africa, whose DNA is now on this soil, and by us working together, we did things that other people thought were impossible. My parents' generation knew that if we came together, blacks and whites, Christians and Jews, we can upend Jim Crow. We used to be a people that can point into the sky and look at the moon and change it from a dream to a destiny. There's no Republican or Democratic way to get there. You definitely don't get there by fighting each other, beating each other down, and dividing people against themselves. We did those things because we found our common ground. Now, this is not easy. It's the tough work of building a great community, or what King called the beloved community. It's hard to do that. But it's about time we get to the hard work of building this nation to be who we want us to be, our best values, our best ideals, the best of who we are. We need leadership in this country that understands what patriotism means. And patriotism is love of country, and you can't love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. Doesn't mean we're always going to agree or some days always like each other. But we got to extend each other grace, less judgment, and more hard work to find common ground to do the things that other people on the planet Earth don't think we can do. We're a nation that leads, and we've got to get back to doing that together. So I'm happy to answer any questions you all want, but I'm grateful, seriously grateful, to have you all in Newark. For those of you who only passed through our airport, take some time to the downtown and see the new buildings we built, new hotels, go up the street, see the new supermarket we put in place, see the schools that are now rank us as the #1 city in America for beat the odds schools, high poverty, high performance. We're doing great things.
Senator,
my old friend.
You've never invited me to your house.
And after this, I'm going to tell you to get off my stairs. Get off my lawn.
Most of the Democrats I've talked to are skeptical about your message of love. They say that man cannot live on love alone, and they wonder if you're ready to take on a hard-nosed Donald Trump.
Well, I called on Cruz first because when I was mayor, he gave me my most difficult questions. I start with the hardest first. Look, love ain't easy. And our history in this country, some of the toughest, most heroic people that I admire, whose pictures hang in my office, whose statues are in the Capitol, they're folks that took on armed hate, billy clubs and dogs and fire hose with unarmed love, and they took down Jim Crow. There are folks like a great New Jerseyan, Alice Paul, who loved this country so much she was willing to demand that it live up to its promise. She was the first person ever arrested in front of the White House because she refused to let people in power undermine the power of the people, the rights of women. The people I admire are the people that lead by calling out the best of who we are and not the worst. So I'm running for president because I believe in us. I believe in these values. I'm going to put them before the American people. Hey, and if that's not what they want, then I won't be the next president of the United States. But I know my country. I know the goodness and the decency across this land. I've experienced it. My family I'm in New Jersey because of that decency of white families who would not let my parents be denied housing because of the color of their skin. That's the kind of patriotism, that's the kind of love my family's experienced. I know it exists in our country. I believe in it. I'm putting my faith in that message, that heart, and that reality in America.
Senator, if a lot of people in New Jersey are going to sit and look at this and say, you know, we had another guy who ran for president 4 years ago, and he spent a lot of time not doing his job. How do you convince people that you can run a campaign and yet not make the same mistakes that Chris Christie made?
Look, the voters in New Jersey put their faith in me, and I will never, ever let them down. I'm going to continue to be an active force in the Senate, and at a time of cynicism in Washington, heck, if you just look at the last Congress, at a time that people don't believe Washington can get big things done, in the last Congress alone, I was able to work across the aisle with my partners and get big pieces of legislation done. You know, the system of mass incarceration in this nation is a shame to a nation that is the land of the free. And I, with working with others, passed the first bill that finally takes a real crack at ending mass incarceration. Even something I realized, that capital in this country is lazy, doesn't invest. In fact, about 5 cities have the overwhelming majority of investment capital going there. I wrote legislation with a Republican across the aisle that now is law and is going to get hundreds of billions of dollars finally invested into the lowest income areas, creating many, many jobs. So I know I can do my job as a senator. I've been showing that. And I also know that I can answer the call of what I believe my country is right now, which is leadership that's going to bring us together and not try to rip us apart. Yes.
Senate and president, as you're allowed to do in
Well,
New Jersey now?
well, I'm grateful that New Jerseyans pulled together to make sure that that possibility is there. But my focus is running for president of the United States. And I will be running hard and going directly to the people, hand to hand, shaking hands, knocking on doors. In many ways, the way I started my career when I was running for city council, I'm going out to the people, and I intend to be the next president of the United States.
Senator,
yes, sir.
3 quick questions.
3 quick questions. You're a greedy guy. Even Cruz over here, who used to badger me in the day.
President, will you do away with private health care?
Even countries that have vast access to publicly offered health care still have private health care, so no.
And what will you do about the filibuster so you can maybe move some of these issues that you want to...
The filibuster is a decision that's made in the Senate. My colleagues and I, everybody I've talked to believe that the legislative filibuster should stay there, and I will personally resist efforts to get rid of it.
And lastly, if President Trump attacks you on your history with banks and hedge funds, how will you respond to that?
You know, anybody who knows my history knows that my history is standing up for people that are often being hurt by bad actors. I lived in Newark during the mortgage crisis. I saw the predatory loans where people were luring people into homes who had no jobs and no income, and they gave them cash at closing. My record as a mayor, my record as a senator is fighting those interests that are trying to screw people. And when it comes to defending folk, I will be ferocious.
Senator,
yes, in the back.
Following up on that, you know that there are some who criticize you as being too corporate among those on the left. I know you're not taking corporate PAC money, so have you changed your opinion about corporate America?
Let's be clear. Whatever you do when you're in elected office, you're going to get criticized. You know, when I was, before I got into elected office, when I helped somebody cross the street, people said I was a really nice guy. Now when I help somebody cross the street, there's somebody standing back and saying, oh, he's just trying to get a vote. There's a lot of understandable cynicism out there, and I feel like the best way to do that is with your actions. I believe we are a great nation because we have stuck up for each other. And we've got to stop bad actors from taking advantage of people. And it happens. I see it in the changes that have been made to allow credit card companies to, in my opinion, overcharge. I fought overdraft fees as a senator. I can go through the things I've done to hold people accountable, and I think we need a lot of change, from our tax laws, to making them more fair, to ending things like carried interest. I'm going to continue being the person I've always been, despite the criticism. In fact, as my mom was joking with me last night, son, if you're not being criticized, you're probably really not doing that much.
Senator.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I've got 2 quick questions for you. The RNC just released a statement on your candidacy this morning where they said you're a, quote, political opportunist who left Newark ridden with crime and a, quote, emblem of poverty. And I wanted to see what your reaction is to that.
Well, again, this is what we have, is people for political purposes trying to not talk about what they're for, but talk about what they're against. Newarkers, and I think people in cities all across America, are tired of people that are putting down our urban spaces, trying to make them into jokes, ridiculing them, demeaning them, and degrading them. My time here in Newark, during the worst economy of my lifetime, we did things that other people thought were impossible to do. We ushered in Newark's biggest economic development period in 60 years, building our first new office towers and our first new hotels, putting Newarkers to work, constructing them, and Newarkers to work in those buildings. We brought supermarkets to food deserts. We improved our public schools to a level now. In fact, if you're a black kid in Newark, which is our majority of our schools, your chances of going to a high-performing school that beats the suburbs went up 300%. And perhaps the best thing to say to anybody who wants to criticize my leadership in Newark, when I left Newark, for the first time in 60 years, our population was growing again. People were moving here because of our schools, moving here because of our arts and entertainment, moving here because they weren't interested in tearing down this city. They wanted to be a part of this city's rising. Yeah, go ahead.
Howard Schultz has just expressed interest in running as an independent, and this has gotten a lot of criticism, particularly from Democrats who say he'd be helping Donald Trump. What's your reaction? Are you glad he's interested in the race?
Anything you do, there's going to be competition, bring it. I believe in the American people. I think they're going to look to the Democratic Party for leadership. I believe that we are going to consolidate in this country against the politics of hate, politics of division. I think that people are tired of the demeaning and are ready for some redeeming, to reclaim ideals of civic grace and decency. And so I'm going to run a kind of campaign where I'm not focused on who else is in the race. When I was a high hurdler in El Tapan High School, my coach told me, don't look to the right and look to the left, run your race, and that's what I intend to do. Quiero dar muchas gracias a la comunidad latina porque en mi campaña en esta ciudad, sin la comunidad latina no tuve una victoria grande. En el futuro, este es un país por todo. Es un país con fe y esperanza. Vamos a tener un país más grande, mejor por todo. So, con la comunidad latina, parte de la comunidad americana, vamos a tener una victoria grande, no por un candidato, pero por nuestro país.
Los inmigrantes.
Los inmigrantes, es un país de inmigrantes. Es un país es más fuerte porque tenemos personas en nuestro país de alrededor del mundo. Necesitamos inmigración. Y voy a luchar para cada persona que está en nuestro país.
Senator Booker.
I'm going to go on the way back here to the dude with the hat behind the TMZ camera because I am literally not looking forward to him asking me a question. Go ahead.
With the Huffington Post, my question is, there was just a major teacher strike in LA. At part of that was the issue of charter schools. You obviously recently spoke at a convention that is somewhat supportive of those types of alternative education. How do you defend yourself against some of the criticism you might get on the left over your history of support for charter schools? Will you continue to run as an unabashed advocate of it? And what do you say about those teacher strikes across the country?
Well, first and foremost, our teachers are ridiculously underpaid in America. If you just want to look at this in an economic analysis, they're the profession that contributes the most to a thriving American economy. And we cannot continue to devalue what is one of the greatest professions in our country, which is public school teachers. Hermana! Hola, ¿cómo está? A la victoria! I'm sorry about that.
What'd you say?
Guys, just 2 more questions.
I'm sorry, but this is really important. I'm going to run the boldest pro-public school teacher campaign there is. It's because how I governed when I was mayor of the city of Newark. We fought to get teachers here in the city increased pay, increased respect, better access to technology. And by the way, when we talk about schools, let's not just talk about being there for teachers, but also for counselors. Our schools do not have enough counselors. Mental health professionals, our schools need more supportive environments. Our schools should be more than just schools, but cathedrals of learning where we support our children. I believe in public education. I am a product of public education. And as a senator, I've invested my time and effort working with teachers groups around this country. I'm Cory Booker, and I ran for Senate and got the endorsement of our state's teachers unions. I'm proud of my record. It's not anything needed to defend. I believe that we shouldn't have one-size-fits-all education. Local leaders should make decisions about what works best for them. And if you're a kid in Newark, what we've created, double-digit increases in our graduation rate in readings and math, and it was done by who? By public school teachers. I can't believe we live in a country, and this is the absurdity of it all, where a 25-year-old stockbroker pays less than a percentage of their income in taxes or gets better tax breaks than a 50-year-old teacher who reaches in their pocket to pay for food or sanitary products or clothing for their kids. We need to start having a tax code in this country that reflects our values as a people. Everybody understands that we can't be a leading nation without leading the world in education, and we need to get back to that. Public education. I'm going to go to the person in the back jumping up and down. Oh, yeah, Antoine, how you doing, man? I can't see you underneath all that hattage.
So, we know that you cited President Obama as one of your mentors in the past. Just curious, did you reach out to him when you were finalizing?
Well, first of all, I just want everybody to know I miss Obama, and I miss her husband too. Look, I've had conversations with Obama in the past. God bless him, and I'm really grateful for the kind of leadership he provided this country. I got to, in fact, one of the first things I did on the day I was sworn in by Joe Biden as a United States Senator was he invited me to the Oval Office, and we sat and had a heart-to-heart, and he gave me some of the best advice I could get to become a senator. In fact, that day, the best advice I got in my early days, rather, was from John McCain and from President Barack Obama about what it meant to be a statesperson, to put patriotism before petty personal attacks. So we've been blessed to have great leaders in this country, especially our ancestors who we should be honoring now. There are no statues built to haters. There are no statues, well, I shouldn't say that. There's maybe some statues, unfortunately there are, but we honor people at their funerals that we've seen of recent for their grace and for their decency and for their selfless service, and we need to get back to elevating those kind of folks. And they're not always people with titles. As I learned here in Newark, the greatest leaders I've ever met aren't in White Houses or Senates or Congresses or what have you. They're people in communities, neighbors who are strong on blocks, tenant leaders who hold folks together. The greatness of this country lies in our ability to be there for each other, to extend grace and kindness, and we need to start having a better celebration of those values in our nation, especially and hopefully reflected in the people we elect to our highest offices. Let's go there. One last question. Yes, sir.
Do you believe that Donald Trump is a racist?
I don't know the heart of anybody. I'll leave that to the Lord. I know there are a lot of people who profess the ideology of white supremacy that use his words, and I believe his failure to condemn bigotry and racism. I believe that when he makes comments about African countries, when he challenges and demeans the ability of a federal judge to do their job because of their ancestry, that's bigoted language, and there's no way around that. But I just want everybody to know I'm going to run a race about not who I'm against or what I'm against, but who I'm for and what I'm for. I'm not looking even to simplistically to beat Republicans. No, I'm looking to unite Americans in this race, because I believe we have more in common than divides us. I believe that this reflexive partisanship is undermining our ability to find common ground and get common sense things done. We right now agree on enough to make big changes in America, to drive down healthcare costs, to drive up student achievement, to fix our infrastructure, to provide better education, to make us safer and stronger and more prosperous. And so I'm really excited over the coming months to put my ideas before the American people, and I know I have confidence in them. But the other thing I'm going to be trying to do over these next months is to just appeal to what I know is the goodness and the decency of Americans. And we've got to stop the trash talking, Twitter trolling, tearing folks down. This is a time for all of us to think about our role in putting the indivisible back in this one nation under God.
Have you spoken to President Obama?
All right. What's that? I definitely can, and I'm going to let this be the last question, and I'm sorry, and then I'll go up. But this is really important. bringing people together means we should be uncompromising in talking about justice and holding people accountable. I really worry that right now we have a country that has such appalling levels of injustice. Right now, there are over 1,000 jurisdictions in America where kids have more than twice the blood lead levels than Flint, Michigan. Here in Newark, down in Camden, kids are drinking out of bottled water because of the lead in their pipes. We have a nation where there's hundreds of places where it seems to be easier to find unleaded gasoline than unleaded water. And a lot of this is not about pointing fingers. We all have to start taking responsibility, because it seems like we're more eager to do something like giving tax cuts to corporations, and weren't even asking for the level of tax cuts that we gave, as opposed to investing in the infrastructure that would keep our children safe and strong. The most valuable natural resource this country has is not oil or gas or coal. It's the genius of our children. If we're going to compete in a 21st century knowledge-based economy, we should all be morally outraged at so many of our children's minds being addled by lead levels that should tear at the heart of all of us. And so this is what got me into politics. When I started out, the Central Ward of Newark was having a lead crisis because of lead paint at that time. But even as we stand here right now, we have Superfund sites that are within just a few miles of where we stand. And we now know from Princeton data that children being born around Superfund sites, these are the highly toxic sites in our country, have 20% or significantly higher rates of autism, significantly higher rates of birth defects. And what's happening with these toxic Superfund sites in our country? Because of literally Reagan and Mitch McConnell voted for it. Reagan reauthorized a small tax on the most polluting companies. But yet in this era of people saying that we don't want any new taxes, those small taxes have lapsed. I've pushed for them in the Senate since I got there. And what's happened to Superfund sites around this country? We've seen more of them. They've actually increased, putting our children at risk. I'm sorry. It's easy to say I love America, but love is not a word. It is action. It is sacrifice. It is work. And if we're allowing our children to fall prey to lead or toxic sites with this rampant environmental justice that we see from the Black Belt of the South to the Great Lakes area, it casts a shadow over all of us. And so we need to come together now. Enough of this politics that we're just tearing each other down. That seems to be the end unto itself. We have a greater calling than that, to elevate our children, to take care of the elderly, of be there for each other. That's when we are a great nation. That's when we do things that other people say that can't be done. And that's what my presidential campaign will be about. And if this country sees fit to elect me president of the United States, that's what my leadership will be about. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.